Hello everybody, my name is Ratnos, and welcome to This Week in Mythic Plus. This week's affixes are Tyrannical, Quaking, Inspiring, and of course, Tormented. It's not the greatest week to ever Keystone. It's also not horrific either. Tyrannical Quaking is kind of rough on some boss fights. Inspired slows down the trash throughout the dungeon, which is a challenge for high-level key pushing, because on a Tyrannical week, you need to get that trash done really fast in order to have enough time to do all the boss fights. So I doubt you'll see World First keys, World First Tyrannical keys even done this week, although it's really not that bad. If you're interested, 12 weeks ago I made a video where I went through each dungeon this week and talked a little bit about each of them. Plans are roughly the same as they were 12 weeks ago for the dungeons. The routes are available on Writer.io, link in the description below. Instead, I figured I would use this video to talk a little bit about the specific mechanics of these affixes, because that's what I've been doing as we've entered this second phase of each of these affix combos, and third phase very soon for these affix combos. So Quaking, let's start by talking about Quaking. A lot of people know that Quaking is on a 20-second timer, and you'll usually know this because you have a weak aura that gives you that 20-second timer, but if you don't have one of these, it is a life changer. So this Quaking bar, it will show you when it's actually in game. This would be the 20 seconds. This first third, and it will show you where the possible quakes are. Basically, the way the game works is every 20 seconds, the game will flip a coin. I don't actually know what the weights are for yes and no on that coin, but it'll either decide to quake you or it won't, and then it'll choose again every 20 seconds after that. So you can use this to know whether or not it is definitely safe to be blowing all your cooldowns as a caster, for instance, and casting a bunch of stuff, or when to time some movement, all those sorts of things. Knowing when there might be a quake is really useful, so I definitely recommend grabbing this weak aura. This one also, the current cast warning, is really good. This will do some simple arithmetic, which is when a quake starts, it will figure out if that quake or your current cast are going to finish first. And if the quake is going to win, then it will air horn you to stop your cast. Very, very good for casters. And actually, when I do Havoc Demon Hunter keys on this week, it's also pretty good to make sure I don't get chaos locked on my I-beam. So those are some weak auras that can help. A couple other things about Quaking you may not know. Quaking is a physical hit if you hit somebody else with your quake, and of course they're going to hit you with their quake as well in that instance. It's a physical hit for 40% of your health, but since it's physical, it is mitigated by armor, which means it sort of evens out on tanks, right? Tanks have a higher health bar, but they also have more armor, particularly depending on which tank they are. If they're a plate wearer, it can often mean that actually they're less impacted by being quaked than other members of your group, particularly if they're not under too much pressure from the rest of the pull. They can be one of the best choices if you have to quake somebody to choose to stack on top of. And if you ever realize you are in a situation where the confines are so tight that you do have to quake somebody, you really want to make sure you only quake one person. You should stand right on top of them, basically. If you realize that, hey, you're in this narrow corner, there's only enough space for 4 people to spread out, just run like right on top of the tank, and both of you will be directly on top of each other. That's going to minimize how much space is covered by both of you, since you're quaking each other anyways. So that reaction, it's a little bit less useful than it used to be during, BFA. Back before they changed quaking, that was, I think, more commonly done. But these days, it's really deadly if 2 people stack on top of each other. If 2 people have the same idea, and you have 3 people getting hit by the same quake, then all of a sudden it's 80% of your health. That is a huge amount of damage, so you do want to avoid that. Inspiring, not too much to mention about this. The one thing I would say is a really useful feature of MDT, Mythic Dungeon Tools, is that it will show you which mobs are inspiring, and you can then use that to help figure out how you want to attack the pulls that include an inspiring mob without having to actually start the key. And potentially, if you're creating your own route, you can use that to decide which packs you want to skip. Because depending on what your group setup is like, it may work best for you to really try and minimize the amount of inspiring mobs you wanted to pull. So if you want to do that in Plaguefall, right, you'd be like, oh, okay, none of these first pulls, which these pulls are pretty benign, you can definitely do these in your route. None of these have inspiring mobs. Let's add them to the route. Let's cut this pack. This pack, maybe, I guess you probably have to do one of these two, right? But you can cut at least one of them. and you could go through the dungeon and make plans like that. On the other hand, Inspiring is usually not too deadly on most pulls. There are a couple of specific pulls that you're probably familiar with where it starts to be really bad if everything's free casting. But usually pulls are manageable with Inspiring, especially with Tyrannical instead of Fortified being the other active affix. So I would say don't overreact too much to that affix. It's a really good time for if you have somebody with like a Thunderstorm, a Typhoon, to be ready to land that on the mob and then land whatever Vital Interrupt or AoE stun you need. Anyways, those are some thoughts on the affixes this week. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to continue making these videos weekly, although, as you can tell, not too much novel information to share as we're getting deeper into the patch, and it's more often these weeks we've already had. So, as always, if you're interested in hearing more about this week, go watch the video from 12 weeks ago as well. And yeah, thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.